The rain had been falling all day thin, silvery threads stitching time together outside the windows of a 6-story walk-up on the sleepy end of Maple Street. Inside apartment 6C, the soft hum of a space heater mingled with the rustle of pages. Turning, it smelled faintly of old books, lavender tea, and the kind of dust that only settles where stories live long and slow. Layla lived alone, unless you counted the fig tree by the window or the stray spider plants that had taken over her, bookshelf-like gentle green trespassers. But if you looked closely, very closely, you'd see that the apartment's true monarch wasn't Layla at all. Jasper didn't make a sound as he moved, even over creaky wooden floors. His black and white coat was tuxedo crisp, his green eyes as ancient as tides. He didn't meow unless it mattered. He didn't purr unless it counted. And he never ever asked permission for anything. Layla, a 4th grade teacher turned remote educator by circumstance rather than choice, had once joked during a virtual staff meeting that her cat was studying her every move. But behind that joke sat something she didn't understand, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, she was right. Jasper had always watched, not just like a cat, not even like a person. He watched the way a storybook listens at bedtime, like he was waiting. It was early 2021 when it started, the subtle shift. Something began threading itself into the quiet fabric of Layla's days. She first noticed it during a math lesson on a Tuesday, right after lunch. The clouds had been moody, light glancing off the window in streaks. Layla had turned to refill her tea, and when she returned, 28 little rectangles of 4th grade faces were all laughing, some covering their mouths, others frozen in surprise. She followed their eyes toward the webcam. There he was, Jasper, not curled in his usual spot beneath the radiator, not perched on the windowsill pretending not to care. No, Jasper was directly in front of the camera, his face too close and uncaring. One paw pressed deliberately into the keyboard. He was blinking slowly, cat code for some secret emotion tale, flicking in a rhythm that made no sense at all. "What's he saying?" one girl whispered between giggles, as if Jasper might answer. "Is he helping with the fractions?" asked another. Layla managed an awkward laugh, nudging him gently aside. But Jasper didn't leave. He resettled next to her laptop, curling into a loaf, blinking at the class like a philosopher enduring amateur questions. From that day forward, he always showed up before the bell. He never interrupted the lessons, just participated in ways that no one quite expected. And slowly, her students began to greet Jasper first, not Layla. "Hi, Jasper," shouted Javier before a spelling quiz. "Morning, Your Majesty," whispered Mena from a blanket fort in her bedroom. Layla had taught for nearly 12 years. She'd seen what bored children looked like, what distracted minds could do to a perfectly good lesson plan. But now they leaned into the screen. Now, even the quiet kids stayed 5 minutes longer just to see what Jasper would do. It didn't feel logical. It didn't feel planned. But somehow, the presence of one ordinary-looking cat had turned a weary Zoom call into something gentle, sparked, alive. There was a boy in the back row box who hadn't spoken in weeks. One day, Jasper sneezed. The boy laughed. The change was slight, like the difference between a closed and slightly open window. Nothing monumental at first glance, but you could feel it. The air moved differently. Layla never trained Jasper. She never bribed him with treats or filmed him doing tricks. She never even meant for him to show up on camera. But somehow, the cat had caught something impossible. And then came the moment that Layla would never forget. It was late Friday. the kind of tired where even coffee gave up. Her students were filling in decimals on virtual whiteboards, faces lit in pale blue glow. Then, a voice small, serious. "Ms. Layla," said Aaron, adjusting his glasses, "is your cat helping us with math?" Layla blinked. "Helping? Yeah." He looked at me right when I got the answer right. Like he knew. The class went quiet. Even the usual primetime gigglers were still on the screen. Jasper stretched one long, regal arc of his back, then sat down and stared directly into the webcam. He blinked once, twice, 3 times. The call ended moments later. Just another line in the digital schedule. But that question echoed. Was he? Layla looked at her feline companion, who now lay curled into a perfect spiral near her toes. A cat, certainly, but maybe something else too. Some pets chase birds. Jasper chased fame, but only after he caught something deeper, a quiet spot in the noise, a feeling, a thread between hearts, or perhaps a classroom that had been waiting for him all along. The first time Layla saw Jasper, he was curled in the top corner of a worn cat tree, positioned beneath the shelter's flickering fluorescent light like a reluctant king under glaring stage lights. There was nothing flashy about him, no dramatic meow, no tail flicking theatrically. He just looked at her, once. That single glance, low, considering, stayed in her mind long after she had moved on to the kittens in the next room. The volunteer beside her had cleared her throat gently. "That one's Jasper," she'd said. "He's particular. We don't show him to most people anymore." Layla raised an eyebrow. "Why not? He's been adopted twice." The woman paused, then added with a strange softness, "But he always comes back. He only stays where he chooses to stay." Layla looked again. Jasper hadn't moved. Only his green eyes followed her, flicking, calculating, not with suspicion, but curiosity, as though he were the one doing the evaluating. She came back the following week. He hopped into her lap for precisely 8 seconds, long enough for commitment, short enough for dignity. That afternoon, papers were signed. Layla didn't need convincing. Something had clicked. He rode quietly in the crate on the way home, not a single complaint. When they arrived, he walked out of the carrier, sniffed the edges of her rug, leaped onto her worn armchair, circled 3 times, and promptly slept. From that night on, Jasper wasn't just her cat. He was her shadow, her sentry, her silent roommate with eyes that always seemed half an inch beyond this world. Jasper wasn't needy. He didn't yowl at doors or stray onto countertops. He never knocked over Layla's tea mugs or chewed her charger cords. He moved like thought, quiet and sudden, inward and present. For the first week, he barely approached her. But then came the socks. On a rainy Tuesday, one of Layla's socks, clean, rolled unmistakably, hers appeared beside her bed. She thought she might have dropped it. By Thursday, she found 4. By Saturday, she watched him, silently upright, carrying a 5th one down the hallway. He never played with them, just delivered them, gently, purposefully, like offerings, at first. She offered some in return, bits of chicken, a sardine or 2, but Jasper always blinked at her as though unimpressed by bribery. That wasn't their game. There was something about his attention, whether Layla was reading, grading, or simply staring into the glow of an old movie. Jasper was there, but never resting next to her like some honey-hungry kitten. He'd position himself on the windowsill or a nearby pillow, always at eye level and always watching. One night, she caught him staring at the television as if deciphering the plot. It was an old British detective film, and she swore his ears twitched every time the pipe-smoking inspector made a discovery. "Are you even following this?" she murmured. Jasper didn't blink. Then came the keyboard incident. It was during parent-teacher conference season, and Layla had left her laptop open while rushing to microwave leftovers. When she returned, there he was, sitting squarely on the keyboard, tail curled neatly across the spacebar. "Really?" she asked, laughing. "Need to send an email or something?" He looked at her, then tapped one paw lightly on the delete key once. Messages appeared on screen, then vanished. She reached to shoo him, but something stopped her. Childish, perhaps. Something soft and silly that made her pause. "Did you delete one of my complaints about the math curriculum?" Thumped his tail once. That night, Layla sat with him longer than she had in months. She talked not like someone hoping for a response, but like someone pouring tea into 2 cups. Because solitude sometimes wants ceremony, he listened. He always did. By fall of 2020, their patterns had settled like fog on glass. Evenings were reading or movies. Weekends involved sun on the fire escape. And Jasper continued his sock deliveries without explanation or fail. Sometimes, Layla would wake and feel a light pressure near her feet. Not atop the bed like a normal cat companion, but beside it always to the right. She never questioned it, never wondered why he growled softly when her doorbell rang, or how he always arrived at the window a few seconds before the FedEx truck pulled up. There was a rainy Sunday in November in changing grey and quiet that marked the last piece of the puzzle. Layla had left a documentary playing as she marked spelling quizzes. It was something about animal cognition, mice and puzzles, and primate tools. She hadn't been watching, too absorbed in red pen loops, half listening. She heard the narrator ask, "Can animals anticipate intent?" Her eyes lifted. Jasper was mid-stretch on the rug, his back arched, tail lifted into a hook as he glanced directly into the paused screen. She leaned back, narrowing her gaze. "Hey," she said out loud, absurdly. "You know you're not people, right?" He turned away but flicked his tail once, side to side. Dismissal, agreement, a shrug. Jasper didn't respond. But at the time, Layla could have sworn at her nonsense. She told herself later that on the screen, just for a flickering moment, the cursor pulsed and disappeared. Keyboard error, maybe dot, or something quieter, something waiting. Spring would come with longer days and colder coffee, and with it, a shift neither Jasper nor Layla expected. But for now, in the world that existed between warm lamps and steady routines, there was a delicate rhythm. Jasper didn't ask for anything, but he always arrived when Layla needed him most. Not a lap cat, not a trickster, something else, a listener, a presence, the kind you don't know you look for until he's there, in the room, and the air feels full again. Layla's apartment had always been a place of quiet rituals, always tea at 10, always slippers by the door, always soft jazz when the lights dimmed. But by the spring of 2020, those patterns had softened around the edges, worn and stretched, thin by the strangeness of a changing world. The notice had come on a Thursday evening. Her elementary school would be moving entirely online until further notice. Layla had blinked down at the email, rereading it once, twice. The words looked foreign on the screen. Remote instruction, distance learning, Zoom accounts to be issued shortly. She remembered sighing deeply, the sound of it fuzzing, the steam on her glasses. She wasn't a tech phobie, exactly. but she measured her life in pencils and chalk dust and smiles seen in real time. Now, that continuity would be filtered through a webcam older than most of her students. Her laptop made an unholy worry sound every time it booted up. The built-in microphone crackled like a campfire, and the camera, positioned at the very top of the screen, it cast everything in a slightly blue hue, as if her home were submerged in aquarium light. Jasper had watched her set up. Everything a box on top of a stack of textbooks to elevate the laptop, a small ring light bought in. Panic from an online retailer, her notes taped to the wall in front of her, just outside the camera's view. She'd even practiced smiling while speaking to a screen, hoping to make fourth grade math seem less like a spreadsheet and more like a magic trick. Her first full Monday of Zoom classes had gone surprisingly well, mostly a few audio glitches. One accidental screen share of a grocery list, and a lot of children forgetting to mute themselves. But the kids were showing up, and showing up in 2020 felt like a win. It happened on a Wednesday. The class was covering fractions, and Layla, halfway through explaining improper numerators, had stepped into the kitchen to steep her afternoon tea on her counter, lavender oolong, a chipped ceramic mug, and the hopeful hum of near normalcy. The sound that pulled her back wasn't panic, it was laughter. Open, full belly, fourth grade laughter. Enough to echo through her cracked office door. Enough to lift the hairs on her arms. She hurried back, confused. The Zoom call was still live. All 28 faces still blinked back at her. Some leaned closer, others covering their mouths as though holding in a secret. They weren't laughing at each other. They were looking at the screen. Layla followed the path of their attention and saw him. Jasper was standing squarely on her keyboard, front paws resting near the number keys, his body stretched with regal casualness, face only inches from the webcam. The light from the laptop reflected in his eyes, making them glow like green lanterns. One student, Ava, waved frantically. "Ms. Layla, is that your cat?" Layla opened her mouth, shut it, then laughed. "Yes. Meet Jasper." Jasper blinked once, slowly, emotion absorbed by fourth graders like it was gospel. "He looks so serious," said Miguel. Another piped up. "He just sat down like he's about to grade my paper." Layla attempted to lift Jasper, but he dug in gently, settling into the shape of a melted loaf. His tail curled once across the keyboard, and he adjusted himself until he had the best view of the class. And just like that, he stayed. From then on, he joined every call. No invitation, no schedule, just quietly present. He began positioning himself beside the laptop 10 minutes before class began, meowing once as if to announce roll call. Layla didn't bother trying to move him anymore. Instead, she placed a shallow cardboard box next to the monitor, lined with a soft tea towel. Jasper approved. He climbed in, curled tight, and began attending fourth grade. It became a ritual. Every morning, Layla would log in with "Good morning, class," and "Yes, Jasper's here too." "Good morning, Jasper," chorused the students, their voices from couches, kitchen tables, bunk beds, and makeshift learning nooks. One day, during a read aloud of Charlotte's Web, Jasper let out a gentle, timely meow, just as Wilbur was learning about friendship. The children gasped. "He knows the story," cried Alina. "He's reacting." Another day, mid-multiplication puzzles, Jasper batted a pen off the desk with theatrical flair. Dylan snorted so hard his glasses fell off. That was perfectly timed. He's got jokes. Soon, students began aiming their cameras to include their own pets. Puppies wagged at the screen. Guinea pigs squeaked. A rabbit named Thunder rolled into view in a sock-lined stroller during show and tell. But Jasper remained the constant. He never chased anything, never moved suddenly. He just blinked, watched, judged, comforted. Layla soon realized something. 10 of the children greeted Jasper before they greeted her. And somehow, she didn't mind. "He's like our class president," joked Jordan one morning, holding up a drawing of Jasper in a top hat. "More like a wizard," said Priya, "or a guardian." Layla wasn't sure why, but the suggestions didn't feel silly. Jasper had become part of the fabric of learning, not decoration, not a petting zoo, but woven into the flow, like paragraph breaks or laughter during lunch. There was even a Friday, when Layla had a pounding headache, the kind that turns sentences to soup. She considered cancelling, but logged on anyway. She was barely 5 minutes into the lesson when she forgot what she was saying. Her cursor hovered uselessly over a PowerPoint slide. Jasper, still and silent, lifted his head and me-o'd. Just once, everyone's screen lit with smiles. Steve whispered, "He's reminding us. Fractions, right?" Layla regained her pace. A voice steadied, and Jasper folded back into his box like a signalman who'd finished his job. The mornings began the same. The whir of an old laptop powering up. A soft meow as Jasper leapt into his designated box, settling in like a sentient paperweight. Layla sipping her lavender tea, tapping the screen to begin the day. But something had changed. It wasn't just the novelty anymore. Jasper wasn't a mascot because he was cute. He had become something else. A presence, reliable, beloved, comforting. There was a moment during reading time, one Thursday, that stuck with Layla. Jamie, a shy student with a stutter, had been coaxed into reading a short paragraph aloud. The words trembled at the edge of his lips, trembling like leaves in wind. As he finished with a breath that sounded like relief, Jasper let out a single, low purr. The class hesitated, then broke into applause. Not wild clapping, but a soft chorus of "Yay, Jamie," and tiny thumbs up flooding the chat box. Jamie didn't smile with his mouth. He smiled with his whole face. Later, Layla wondered if Jasper had fallen asleep and made that sound just by chance. But then again, chance had never looked so deliberate. The stories began piling up like bedtime tales. Ariana was having one of those days, her camera off, her responses monosyllabic. Layla had just started writing her a private message, when Jasper unexpectedly rolled onto his back, paws curled into a tidy "please observe me" gesture. Ariana turned her camera on. She was giggling. "He's playing possum." She typed in the chat, and her classmates jumped in. "Mood," joked another student. "Jasper gets it," wrote a third. He meowed, stretched, and looked directly into the lens. And even through a grainy webcam, it felt like he had heard and answered for Luca, a hurricane of energy usually wriggling in his chair. Focus was fleeting unless sound effects or bold fonts were involved. But one day, mid-vocabulary quiz, Layla noticed he was still, focused, quiet, when she unmuted him to ask how he managed to stay settled. He didn't answer right away. Then he whispered, "I don't want to make Jasper jump." Layla blinked. "Jump, Luca." Turned his camera slightly. Jasper, virtual and still, watching from his cardboard throne, had captured the boy's attention like a kindly ghost. "He's, like, chill," Luca explained. "So I'm trying to be too." Layla laughed. Gently, not at him, with him, because it made complete sense. They began receiving fan art. crayon versions of Jasper in capes and space helmets, digital slideshows showing the life of a teaching cat. One child drew him on Mars with a chalkboard. Another wrote a poem titled Jasper Listens Even When I'm Quiet. It was sweet at first, then touching, and then somewhere along the way it became profound. Even parents began commenting, "Whatever you're doing over there, Sarah hasn't smiled this much during homework ever," one mum emailed. Another said, "Darren talks more about Jasper than math, but somehow he's still learning. Thanks." The school administration even sent out a staff-wide newsletter with a screenshot of Layla's class mid-lassing Jasper, perfectly posed, eyes half closed, tail artfully draped. The caption read, "Never underestimate the power of a good classroom, pet even virtual." Layla chuckled. Jasper, tucked into her elbow, blinked at the email like it was old news. She began decorating his box. But softly, no flashy costumes, just gentle additions. A baby blue scarf knotted loosely round his neck one crisp morning. A miniature mug of foam, really just cotton fluff, sitting beside him on Fun Fridays. Zah. RA made a diorama in a shoebox titled Jasper's Classroom. It included a tiny desk, a laptop made from folded paper, and a board with "Today, long division, meow." Layla had hung it above her desk. Jasper occasionally glanced up at it, tail flicking once in passing approval. Perhaps the most unexpected moment came one rainy afternoon after a particularly hard math chapter. Spirits were low. The chat was silent. Even Layla felt the grey creeping behind her words. That's when Jules, a student who'd lost his grandmother the week before, asked, suddenly, unprompted, "Can Jasper still feel love if he doesn't smile?" The question hung in the air. Layla looked at the screen, unsure what to say. But then Jasper, as if on cue, sat up, stretched, and approached the webcam, slowly deliberate pause, quiet grace. He blinked once, then twice, his tail curled into the shape of a question mark, and then he just stayed there. Watching Jules didn't speak again that day, but his eyes rested thereon, the fuzzy guardian framed in light. A silent nod in feline dot. The next morning, Layla received an email. It was from Jules's mother. She wrote, "He asked me if we could have Jasper over for dinner. Said he misses having someone in the house who understands quiet feelings. Thank you for whatever that cat is doing. It's helping, more than you can know." Every week after that, Jules drew Jasper a card. Sometimes with riddles, sometimes with poems, once with a tiny heart made of folded red paper and a note for you, because you're part of our class. It remained propped by Layla's monitor until it faded in the sun. She never moved it. It was easy to think of Jasper as a novelty, but he wasn't a novelty. He was a vessel for stillness, for attention, for connection in a year when even hugs felt suspicious. He never asked for anything. He offered only presence, and presence turned out to be everything. The first video was only 17 seconds long. Jasper had been draped over Layla's keyboard. As usual, during a Tuesday morning lesson on long division, she was halfway through breaking a particularly tricky problem into steps when, quite suddenly, Jasper extended one leg and tapped the corner of the screen. Gently, with profound timing, a beat passed. Then came the meow, short, clear, measured. The class erupted. A parent, listening in from the kitchen, recorded the moment. The caption read, "Ms. Layla's cat is teaching math again." They uploaded it to TikTok on a whim. It buzzed for a bit. Then caught by Friday evening, the clip had hit over 600,000 views. Layla's niece was the first to tell her. "Auntie," she said, half amused, half awestruck, "do you know your cat is on BuzzFeed?" Layla blinked. Buzz, what? By Sunday, there were articles. Zoom's favorite co-teacher wears fur, the cat who cares about Common Core, Jasper. Feline philosopher, probably people, began zooming in on the clip, breaking it down like it was surveillance footage. "Notice the moment he meows," one commenter said. "It's right after the student gets the answer correct. Is he ... affirming it." Someone else wrote, "This cat is smarter than I am." The web unfolded around him. Jasper memes appeared overnight. Me, pretending to understand my job on Zoom beneath a still of Jasper solemnly staring at the screen. Therapist, what's comforting you during hard times? Me shows picture of Jasper on a laptop box. Layla had never intended to be online famous. She didn't have a Twitter account. Her Facebook profile picture still featured her college graduation. But something about Jasper bypassed all that she gave. One reluctant interview to a local parenting blog, the question she heard more than once. "So how did you train him?" She laughed each time, baffled. "I didn't." But that didn't stop offers from rolling in. A children's publishing imprint emailed with interest. Would Jasper be interested in starring in a picture book? An organic pet treat brand shipped a box addressed to Professor Whispers. Layla opened it to find lavender-infused salmon snacks. Jasper sniffed once, turned around, and curled into a ball. Her phone buzzed more often. People wanting updates. Classrooms sending in questions. Does Jasper like music? Does he nap with his eyes open or closed? Can we Zoom with him? Layla tried to keep it measured. She didn't post videos herself. She didn't monetize him or sign Jasper up for merchandise deals. But she did allow a local news team to run a short segment. The piece lasted less than 4 minutes. Layla sat at her desk, answering questions with cautious modesty. Jasper stayed in the box the entire time, until the very end. As the camera focused in for the final shot, Jasper stood, walked to the edge of the box, and placed one paw softly on the mic, clipped to Layla's collar. He blinked once, tilted his head, and let out a tiny chirp. That night, the station's website hit its highest viewer count in months. They got fan mail from places far beyond their city. A family in Norway sent a hand-drawn portrait decorated with glitter glue. A teacher in Nova Scotia asked how her class might borrow Jasper for a virtual assembly. Jasper's fame didn't change him. He still delivered socks, still sat atop the heating vent when tired, still gave Layla a narrowed look whenever she burned her toast. But Layla noticed small things. He stood straighter in the mornings, tail tucked neatly round his feet. He meowed earlier, just once, like checking sound levels. He started blinking in time with class greetings. "Good morning, Jasper," said 29 different kids across 29 different household echoes. And Jasper blinked. Once, twice. Always twice. It occurred to Layla briefly, quietly, that maybe he liked it. Not the noise, not the headlines, but the attention that wasn't demanding. The love that came through observation. One day, Adam brought his goldfish to class. "He wants to meet Jasper." Layla had smiled. Jasper simply peered at the bowl on screen and remained expressionless. The goldfish turned a circle. Jasper raised a paw, and the chat exploded. Jasper, Layla noticed, had never needed an audience. But the world outside had needed something like him. Or maybe just him. Exactly him. A steady blink. a quiet presence, a gaze that landed gently and stayed. "Ms. Layla," said Lena one morning, as the chat buzzed with early greetings, "do you think Jasper knows he's famous?" Layla looked at her cat. Jasper yawned, licked his paw, and curled back down. "He knows what he needs to know," she replied. The world could keep watching. Jasper would keep teaching. There was a softness to the way Jasper existed in the world, as though he'd absorbed the stillness of forgotten rooms and unrushed moments. He didn't demand, didn't intrude, and yet his presence was shaping things quietly, anchoring them. Layla hadn't noticed at first. She was too busy juggling multiplication tables and mismatched time zones, soothing anxious students and managing the strange elasticity of time in a digital classroom. But in the quiet between clicks and coffee sips, she started to see it. The first time she truly noticed was after reading a set of student essays. The prompt had been simple: write about something that keeps you going. The responses were, not one child wrote about hearing their parents argue through thin walls. Another described missing a grandmother they couldn't hug. A third had simply drawn a single tear rolling down a stick figure's cheek. Layla closed the laptop and cried, as though summoned. Jasper walked over, not with drama, not with urgency, just padded over, sat beside her, and leaned his shoulder softly against her calf. He didn't purr. He didn't look at her. He just stayed there until her breathing slowed. When she reached out to pet his head, he allowed it just once and then stepped away. 2 days later, during a lesson on homophones, a child's mic clicked on unexpectedly. A burst of sound hit. The Zoom room, angry voices in the background, sharp and fast. The student had frozen. A few kids flinched. Layla opened her mouth to respond, to act delicately, but something moved first. Jasper, asleep seconds before, opened his eyes, walked across her desk with sudden grace. He tapped a single key on the laptop with one paw. The mic muted. There was no confusion, no panic. Layla didn't have to say a word, and the moment passed without questions. The student later typed in the chat, "Sorry." Jasper blinked once and curled into a nap. Layla started noticing more. He positioned himself differently depending on the subject. During reading time, he lounged. During math, he sat upright. During free writing, he sprawled over the keyboard, but always with one paw placed respectfully off to the side, as if not to interrupt. But it wasn't all solemnity. Jasper had a sense of timing that slid just between absurd and enchanted. During a spelling bee, Layla had turned the camera toward a whiteboard behind her. As she read out the word mischievous, Jasper leaped lightly onto the back of her chair. He then proceeded to curl into an almost artistic shape, front paws tucked, tail wrapped neatly forward, just visible over her shoulder. Then he began to snore, softly, audibly. The students went silent, then peeled into laughter. One child muted themselves mid-cackle. Another whispered, "He's sleeping through the word chaos." Even Layla laughed. "I guess he's confident you'll spell it right." From then on, Jasper became part of their spelling tradition. Whenever a tricky word was given, they all paused to look at Jasper. "Bless us with one blink for good luck," someone would say, and often he obliged. Layla didn't question it. Near the end of the semester, the students organized something Layla hadn't expected. It showed up in her inbox as a shared Google slide deck. Jasper Appreciation Day. Every child had claimed a slide. There were drawings of Jasper as a sports coach, as a wizard, as the president. Others included poems and made-up awards. Most majestic cat in the tri-state area. Best teacher, assistant, feline division, most likely to know my thoughts. The final slide was simply a photo collage of screenshots Jasper curled in his box, blinking mid-meow, perched by Layla's shoulder, lounging during story time. It ended with the words, "Thank you, Jasper, for being with us when school felt strange." Layla shared the presentation during class that Friday. Jasper sat, composed and unbothered, tail flicking only once, and when the slides finished, he raised one paw and pressed it against the keyboard. The screen advanced to a black slide with white letters reading, "We love you." Nobody said anything for a while. Then, just before leaving, one student stayed behind and spoke. "I think Jasper's magic. Not like fairy tale magic, but soul magic. The kind that doesn't sparkle. It just makes you feel ... better." Layla smiled, her hand resting near Jasper's box. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Me too." That night, Layla sat on her couch. The window cracked just enough to let in the cool hush of evening. Jasper jumped onto the cushion beside her, not her lap. Never that, but near enough that they shared warmth. She rested her hand on the fabric beside him. He placed his paw over it briefly, gently, then removed it and curled into himself. There were no crowds applauding, no cameras watching, just soft music, muted city sounds, and two companions who had, somehow, become healers in a year full of empty spaces. And Jasper, as always, blinked once, then twice, and settled into dreams. It began with an email, subject line, "Podcast interview, invitation Whiskers and Wonders, would love to chat." Layla read it twice, then again, her tea cooling beside her. At first, she considered declining. She'd grown tired of talking about things she didn't fully understand, spinning answers to questions like what makes Jasper different. But something in the sender's message disarmed her. We know some cats belong just to their humans. Others, somehow, belong to the world. So she said yes. The interview was recorded on a Tuesday morning. Layla spoke softly, her voice measured, punctuated with quiet chuckles. Jasper appeared midway through the call, leaping gently into frame and giving the softest of chirps. The host froze mid-sentence, a grin blooming through the speakers. "Well," she whispered, "he really does have timing, doesn't he?" The episode aired the following week, and within 48 hours, Jasper had 60,000 new followers on Instagram. Layla hadn't made the account. That was her niece, Kaya, a 10th grader with digital fluency and an eye for soft lighting. She had posted the first photo Jasper curled into his teaching box, complete with tea towel and tiny sign that read Zeralachi assignments. She added the caption, "Our professor of pause is in session." The response was immediate. Comments burst in like birds at open seed. "I need him to help me get through finals. Is it weird I trust this cat more than my boss?" His eyes said, "Do your homework," and I actually started doing it. Every photo added more people, more poems, more love. Jasper blinking beside a stack of books. Jasper yawning during a literature circle. Jasper with one paw pressed delicately against a ruler. Layla didn't engage much 1 foot in the real world. Still grading, still teaching. But she appreciated the way Kaya gently curated Jasper's image and refused to commercialize him. No branded deals, no sponsored treats, just quiet magic in squares of light and softness. And then came the email with the plush design. It arrived. From a toy company Layla only vaguely recognized, but the message was polite, the sketch charming. A soft-bodied Jasper replica, complete with a desk-shaped box and tiny scarf. The company even offered to donate a portion of proceeds to animal welfare causes. Layla considered. She imagined children hugging a tiny Jasper when the world felt too loud. She could see it, feel the pull. But then she looked at the actual Jasper, curled beside her as the rain tapped against the glass, and she shook her head. Some parts of Jasper, his stillness, his gaze, the gentle hush he carried, weren't meant to be duplicated. Not everything needed to be shared to be real. She wrote a kind thank you email and declined. A month later, another kind of offer came in. This one not from marketers, but from teachers. Classrooms around the country, many still remote or hybrid, had started requesting Zoom visits from Jasper. Just a few minutes of calm in otherwise clunky days. So Layla and Kaya organized a small virtual book tour. They picked 10 classrooms from a list ranging from inner-city schools to rural co-ops. Each visit began the same, a wave of students. On screen, Layla reading a passage, Jasper resting nearby. No performances, no tricks, just presence. One special session came from a pediatric cancer ward. It was a small group, 6 children, ages 7 to 11, joined from hospital beds and quiet corners. The teacher had sent a note in advance. They're not always talkative. Just seeing something alive and calm could mean the world. Layla wore soft colors. She picked a book about unlikely friendship. Jasper curled atop a pillow in view, blinking slowly at the screen. As she read, one of the children began to hum, barely audible. Another whispered, "He looks like he understands." And then Jasper, without coaxing, stretched his tail upward and curled it into what could only be described as a heart shape, not a trick, not performative. It held only for a breath, then relaxed. Layla continued reading. No one mentioned it aloud, but afterward, a nurse messaged, "You have no idea what that did. You gave them the softness they didn't know they needed." That night, Layla sat with Jasper beside her feet, the house filled with the hush of a late hour. She reached down and gently rubbed behind his ear. "You're becoming a legend," she whispered. "And still, you won't let me put hats on you, smart boy." Jasper flicked an ear and blinked twice. No fame could change him. No headline could define him. He was still the same quiet creature who delivered socks in the night and curled beside her when words felt too heavy as spring arrived. Her inbox filled with photo collages from other classrooms, Jasper drawn in block crayon or illustrated into comic books. A group of students even sent a video of themselves blinking twice at the start of their day, calling it the Jasper Pledge. Sometimes Layla printed them out. Sometimes she just watched. And always, at the end of it all, was Jasper nudging her hand until she closed the laptop and returned to the real world beside him. A world that made more sense when he was there. On a gentle Thursday afternoon in May, the kind where the clouds seemed more like brushstrokes than weather, Layla brewed her tea without thinking. The jasmine didn't steep long enough. The toast came out too dark, but none of that mattered. Jasper didn't come to the desk for almost 3 years. He'd padded into his box beside the laptop at 8:59 a.m., stretching and settling just before the first cheerful chorus of "Good Morning, Jasper." But today, he sat by the window instead, staring out at the street lamp, even though the light was off. Layla called to him softly. He didn't look over, just curled his tail into a soft spiral and rested his head against the glass. His ears flicked once, half-heartedly. Class passed quietly. She muted herself more than usual. The students asked where their feline co-teacher had gone. Just taking a day off, she told them, managing a smile. Even professors need vacation. They understood. Everyone seemed softer that day, their voices lower, their giggles more careful, as if whispering so Jasper could nap. That night, he didn't curl into his box or bring her a sock. He simply curled beside her on the couch, his breathing slow, measured, featherlight. She read beside him, an old mystery novel he'd always seemed to quietly enjoy. He blinked at the pages once, then shut his eyes. It was some time past midnight. When Layla woke, she hadn't meant to fall asleep, but the book had drifted from her lap and the rain had begun tapping a lullaby against the window. Jasper was still beside her, his form tucked in tight, serene as ever. But then, barely above a whisper, he let out 3 soft meows, spaced like exclamation points in a farewell letter. His chest rose once more, then stilled. She didn't cry right away. She sat there for a long time, her hand resting gently on his back, still expecting the soft rhythm to return underneath her palm. But it didn't. There were no grand moments, no tears in buckets, just a long silence, full of everything he'd ever been in the morning. She sent a message to her class, the subject line gentle and clear. Jasper has logged off. There was a pause in her inbox and then a flood. Letters from students, parents, even teachers she'd never met. Photos of artwork, some years old, were resent with gentle captions. Still our favorite teacher. Thank you, Jasper. We'll miss your tale at roll call. Layla made a scrapbook. She printed every message, every crayon drawing and doodled poem. She called it The Cat Who Taught Us Kindness. The pages smelled faintly of tea and old printer ink. Kaya, ever gentle, helped her design the cover. A simple silhouette of Jasper curled into his box, eyes half shut, tail flicked just so. She kept the book on her bookshelf near the fire escape, the same spot where Jasper had liked to sit, tail flicking in rhythm with the morning breeze. Time passed, tapering gently. Students moved on to middle school, then high school. Emails slowed, fading like warm echoes. But now and then, one would arrive. I'm in 9th grade now, one said, and I still blink twice when I get nervous, like Jasper taught us. Another simply read, he made it easier, thank you. Fall rolled around again, bringing golden light and once forgotten allergies. Layla found herself wandering into the same small pet shelter on a rainy afternoon. More out of habit than intent. She wasn't looking. Not really, but then she heard a rustle in the corner crate. A tiny kitten with far too large paws for its small frame stumbled out, tripped over a water bowl, then stared at her with mismatched eyes, one green, one an odd blue-gray. He blinked once. Twice. Home came quickly after that, almost too quickly for her to process. No test visits, no slow bonding. Just a gentle acceptance, a curl of fluff tucked in her elbow before bedtime. One weekend, while organizing a shelf, the kitten knocked over a stack of old webcam cables. They coiled onto the floor like forgotten snakes. Layla picked up one dusty, light frayed and smiled. Well, she whispered, scratching the kitten behind one ear, he's got big paws to fill. No answers came, but the kitten purred softly, curling against her leg and falling into sleep like a falling feather. She walked into the living room, old book in hand, tea balanced nested in her palms. The laptop sat closed for now, but nearby, a small box waited by the desk, lined with a tea towel and a single unfolded scarf. Quiet returned, but not emptiness, just hush carved with echoes, carried in tales, traced in soft meows, spoken into memory. In some classrooms, the best teachers have fur, and if you listen closely, sometimes they never truly log off.